I want to talk to you today about Christian principles for getting out of debt. Now, this is one thing that transcends every line, be it Christian or non-Christian, is the problem with debt. But see, as Christians, we have an advantage over those that don't believe. We have the Bible, which gives us clear insight and clear principles that are laid out to how we can overcome this damaging thing called debt. Now, debt just doesn't happen naturally. And believe it or not, we have to get ourselves into it. It's not something that just happens. But one way to get out is to use wisdom. See, the Bible says that wisdom is the principal thing, and therefore we should get wisdom. And in all our getting, we need to get an understanding. So it's important then that when we get an understanding of where we are and why we are where we are, then that's the first key to beginning to make the decisions to get out. So when we're making a decision to get out, we need to understand that we must exercise control. You'd be surprised on how big of an important part that simply self-control is. Because oftentimes we get into debt because we want to buy now and pay later. The truth of the matter is oftentimes when we buy now and pay later, we pay all right. We pay much more than we ever were supposed to pay from the beginning. And so a simple thing like simply exercising self-control at the proper time can save us from years of having to pay finance charges upon finance charges, interest rate upon interest rate, by simply exercising the fruit of the Spirit called control. Simply saying, you know what, I'm not going to buy this unless I really need this. And if I really need this, then I'm going to make a way to where I can make sure that if I have to borrow, I can pay it back. See, the Bible is clear. It says that God has called us to be the lenders and not the borrowers. Now, does that mean that it's a sin or it's bad for us to borrow? No, absolutely not. There are times when we have to borrow, but when we borrow, we should do it with wisdom and with self-control. Understanding that God's number one thing is for us to be the ones lending and not always having to borrow. So when we understand the principles then for getting out of debt, one, have wisdom. Use wisdom in everything you do. When you're making purchases, use wisdom. Now, is this too much for me? If I can't afford this, then why am I going to stretch and try to make it happen? Or simply using self-control. You know what? I don't need this right now. I could buy a cheaper car. I could get a smaller house. And things like this. See, these things will help us in years to come and will make it much easier for us to overcome this nasty thing called debt.